Hey, I'm back. I'm gonna be trying out a new type of video where I ramble about stuff while you watch me draw other semi-related stuff. So I'm going to be talking about The Matrix Resurrection, because I have some opinions. So first of all, I really like the original Matrix trilogy, and not just because I'm trans. I also really like the Animatrix too. I think my favorite parts of both have got to be just like the fight scenes. I think they're really fun and dynamic. They're super engaging to watch. Like, I like to draw sometimes while I watch movies or whatever, but when the fight scenes come on, I just physically can't tear my eyes away from the screen. I think my other favorite thing about the original trilogy is Hugo Weaving and Agent Smith. I think his face is just freaky enough that it really hits home. Like, it's not, wrong turn, overly makeup looking mutant face, but it's just barely unsettling enough that you look at it and go, oh, something's wrong. And I think he does a really good job of acting weird. And I like the way they sort of develop and change his character over the course of the trilogy. So it's, he has his individual character arcs in each movie, but it's also one big one over the course. So that being said, Matrix Resurrections had a lot to live up to it, and I'm going to be dumping on it a lot because of how it doesn't fit in with the rest of the series, but I'd say it's, an okay movie on its own. Solid C tier. So I'm going to start with things I liked about it. First, bringing back Niobe from the original series, and also making her bi. Love that. I'm not sure if it was like, a very, maybe not, but there was another character who was she was shown to have a very good, like, close physical relationship with. Anyway, good for her. She deserves it. I like that they brought back Sati. I think, like, they didn't need to, but it was a good way of seeing where the character from the original trilogy ended up and how it impacted her. I liked the supporting cast. There weren't really any other than the crew of the ship, unlike the original trilogy where there were always, like, leaders back in Zion or family at home or whatever. But honestly, I don't think they could have packed more well-developed characters in alongside the main cast, so I'm not have a problem with it. Their personalities weren't that interesting. Like, I never liked any of them that much. But also, the original crew members had the same problem. I never liked them that much either. They were just kind of there to wear leather and look cool. I mean, honestly, like, name the entire ship crew from The Matrix 1. You can't, because they're not memorable. But the supporting cast in this one, I think, wins out just barely because they look a lot better. Like, their designs are more interesting than the original crew. Although, like, the tank and Dozer and then the brother from the later movies I actually liked them. That's the exception to the rule here, I think. And finally, I think my favorite part of Matrix Resurrections was the Neo-Trinity power couple plotline. I mean, it takes up most of the movie's plot, but still. There's the bisexual reasons, they're both incredibly attractive. But there's also, it felt like a good build-up of how focused the original trilogy was on Neo and Trinity and their relationship. I think it, like, flushes out the story and the storytelling because there was kind of a big deal made later in the original trilogy about how the Oracle was not telling Neo and therefore us everything kind of on purpose, and that there's a lot she was hiding for her own ends. So I think it's, totally possible that the prophecy and the reason why Neo's cycle of becoming the One and then choosing to save Zion didn't go the same was because Trinity was also part of the prophecy this time. And it's satisfying, you know? Trinity kind of deserved better in the original. She was introduced, cool, badass, super spy lady, and then spent half the time getting saved by Neo with his cool robot Jesus powers. Anyway, bad things. This is going to be most of the video. Let's start off with the CGI. Now, it isn't bad, but I am of the, as far as I know, unpopular opinion that practical effects are always the better option than CGI for everything. I think that the original Matrix did a good job of blending both CGI and practical effects, and that the sort of not as advanced nature of the CGI they had there added to it feeling, because they didn't use it that much outside the Matrix. Like, the iconic thing is the bullet time and the building rippling like water after they crash into it. I think doing that using the sort of unnatural looking CGI they had back then really added to the feel of the movie, and the Matrix in particular as not quite reality. I think that was good. But it's so much more CGI here. I don't like it. Next, let's move on to actual analysis other than my never-ending grudge against CGI. The main villain of the movie, he's called the Analyst. He's the new architect. He supplanted Colonel Sanders from the original trilogy, and his plan is that he creates a world where everybody's like constantly in distress in some manner because that makes their body produce more energy, and it's like basically Monsters Inc., you know, but also something just commentary on how capitalism makes us all feel too downtrodden to rise up. Something. He's played by Neil Patrick Harris. Now, the character itself has a good idea behind it, but Neil Patrick Harris is the problem. He's so aggressively non-offensive in his looks. There's nothing about him. I look at that face and I think no reaction. At least with old architect Colonel Sanders, you looked at that and you felt something. You're like, that's a weird looking dude. I can't get behind it. And I'm not saying that Neil Patrick Harris doesn't like always plays the same character, but like, you know, sometimes he's salmon, sometimes he's pink, sometimes he's burgundy. It's all red, you know. It's all similar, and it doesn't work for the character I think they're going for. But I'm not some kind of whiny, entitled, new age, fuck whatever. I am going to propose a fix, because I know better than all of Hollywood on how to do movies. In this new version of The Analyst, I think he would be kind of like a Neo fanboy. And I'll get to that. But I think they can keep with the original idea of having him be interested in the use of humans' emotions. I think it would be cool and like a good way to oppose the original Smith with, you know, he always went on as like, I hate humans and I hate love and emotions, and during his talk to Morpheus, he's like, I always worry that I'm going to somehow get infected by your disgusting human emotions from being in the Matrix too long. I think a good way of like being a foil to that, I guess, would be this guy is not only interested in human emotions, he's like fascinated, and he desires to be able to understand and replicate them in the machines. I also think that it would actually explain better why why his whole deal with Neo is, because the movie, it's explained like if he keeps Neo and Trinity close but not close enough, they'll feel like weird repressed feelings for each other, and it's going to be super strong and power the Matrix forever. And it feels like he says, oh, I thought like maybe there was something there, so I had all the higher ups resurrect you via cloning, but it doesn't, he didn't know that would happen, really. So I think in this new version of the character, he's fascinated with Neo because Neo was kind of like the bridge between the machine and human, but obviously kind of more on the human side, having a human body and fighting for the humans. I think this new version is maybe wants to become sort of the Matrix's Neo. He wants to become the bridge between machine and humans, but on the machine side. And so that's why he's trying to resurrect Neo. That's why he's inserted himself in the position of Neo's therapist, so he can study Neo and his emotions and how all that works. And then also, like, the Trinity and Neo power thing was like a bonus to justify it to his superiors. I think that would work and be better, and I think all of Hollywood should give me $1 billion. Great. Next thing I don't like, Agent Smith. This is kind of more subjective than why I don't like The Analyst, but John Barrowman, or whatever his name is, he also has a bland face. I like Hugo Weaving's, like, creepy, rubbery mouth and jowls from the original trilogy, and this man is also just kind of aggressively non-offensive in his looks. The gold standard of classic bland attractiveness. So it doesn't work. I feel like they also lost a lot of the personality, a lot of the hate and the loathing for humans that defined the original Smith isn't present in there. And he just seems like, you know, a weird, cocky dude who doesn't like Neo. It just doesn't feel... It's not as intimidating. It's not as interesting. I just am not into it. And it also, the plot, I'll get into this later, it doesn't really explain why he's still there after the last movie. Like, I probably missed something because I'm dumb, but he just seems to be there without any reason because they wanted Agent Smith back, but they didn't even get Hugo Weaving. As for the plot, I mentioned a lot of it's focused on the power couple. I like that. I don't have that many, like, quarrels with the plot. I like that there's good robots in it. I think that I do wish that they referenced, like, the good robots bit from the Animatrix. Like, just turn their lights green, like the ones in the Animatrix or something. I think that would have been fun. I think that the way they replaced Agent Smith now with swarm mode, I think it's kind of lazy, and it's not scary. It feels just like a bad zombie movie, you know? You could have done anything else, but no, we're just going to put normal humans and then CGI their eyes weird, and this is our new Agent Smith. It's not distinctive or interesting. And now for other kind of more minor stuff. I didn't like the fight scenes. They felt, you know, generic, bland action movie. You got a lot less fun, physics-defying jumping around and weird weapons and all that. It's just a lot of hand-to-hand stuff. I think the Merovingian cameo they brought in was also just useless. It wasn't interesting. I didn't like it. It didn't add to the plot. It felt like they were throwing it in like, hey, look, this is the guy from the other movies. Yeah, we give us money. This is a Matrix 2. I thought the way they had the good AIs appear in the world was just kind of lazy and uninspired. Like, I don't know why you're watching this if you haven't seen Matrix Resurrections, but it's just like a bunch of small balls that form to the shape of a dude, like magnetically or with nanotech or whatever. It just feels like you could have gone so many more ways, especially ways that didn't require 100% CGI. Like, I don't know, maybe they don't appear in the real world and you can kind of tell they're there because the ship starts doing stuff to mimic talking hand motions around you, you know, like the cupboards flying open or whatever. It just feels like a really easy way out to not have to actually grapple with a good way of representing the AI. It's just giving it a weird-looking human body. I think there's a conversation near the beginning of the movie where Tom is in a building with a bunch of people trying to make a new Matrix game because they did that. I don't like that they made the Matrix real in the world. It feels silly and stupid. Like someone proposed it offhand in a board meeting and then it just never got shot down. So they want to make another one, and there's a conversation where they're talking about that, and they're going through like all these things that, well, what policies does the Matrix stand for, and throwing out stuff and then immediately dismissing it offhand, which it feels like that was made in bad faith, honestly. I don't like that the machines are now a corporate bureaucracy sort of thing that the analyst talks about, having to go through, like, you know, levels of higher ups and stuff. Like, in the original, it was obviously more like a hive mind with how the Agent Smiths worked and everything. And it feels like these robots have access to the sum total of all human history and stuff. It feels like they'd know that corporate bureaucracy isn't an effective form of organization. I didn't really like how they didn't, like, they set up that this is a radically different Matrix with a different method of keeping people under control, and then it's just our normal Earth, like, just like the original was their normal Earth, but with their normal technology, except that's fake. Our new Matrix is our normal Earth with our normal technology, except it's still fake. Like, there's nothing different. That felt lazy. If you're going to propose the idea that the Matrix has been radically changed, you should follow through on that. Another of my big complaints, and this is going to take a while, is that the Matrix never really... It didn't feel the same. The movie felt like it didn't understand the Matrix. You can't see, but I'm making emphatic gestures with my hands right now. I think part of it was picking, you know, these incredibly bland, generically good-looking dudes for villains. They never felt like inhuman or creepy or scary just because they're so aggressively normal looking. And, like, you can do that with a villain in the right hands and right situation and, like, play off the normal looking as part of the scare appeal, but it doesn't work here. I think Sati in particular and her whole deal really kind of showcases this not quite understanding of how the original did it. She mentions that, like, her dad, who is a technical engineer or whatever program, is what built the Anomalium, which is supposed to house Neo and Trinity to keep them from waking up and help them power the system. And it's just like that I think is telling. Like, the Anomalium isn't a Matrix name. Everything before it's called the Architect or the Oracle or the Source. It's like plain, no nonsense, easy to understand. The Anomalium sounds like a wizard castle. And I get that, they've been developing, and so the naming conventions are going to change, but it just, there's no reason why naming conventions changing would make it less direct, less concrete of an idea of what the whole thing's about when you hear it. Like, these are machines, their whole deal is that they're going to be straightforward and efficient. And when you say the source, you get it. That's where the Matrix from. When you say the anomaly, I have no idea what that means. I think something that's also kind of telling about how this movie doesn't really understand the Matrix is that at some point, Sati and Niobe or whatever and Neo all jump into the Matrix because Sati's still a program and I guess doesn't want to come out to meet and have a tactics meeting of how they're going to go rescue Trinity. And it takes place in like a generic forest background, which I have a surprisingly big problem with. First of all, like, almost all of the other extra Matrix virtual worlds we've seen so far are very minimalist up to this point. You know, think about the place where the architect lived. It was just a circular room with a bunch of TVs. Think about the place where Morpheus first started showing Neo how the Matrix worked. It's just that famous shot of the fancy chair and the TV and then a completely white background. And Morpheus obviously like put the fancy chair there on purpose. And eventually they get to the dojo. And, oh, Grouchy, you might be saying, that's, you know, just a detailed environment that serves no real purpose as the forest scene. And I mean, dojos are for fighting in, forest you can do meetings in, so it makes sense. But it was brought in for, like, a specific purpose. It wasn't originally there. It was added onto the blank background, specifically so Neo could learn fighting. The forest is just there. We never see, like, a reason. No one mentions offhand, like, forests are good for meetings. No one says, oh, this should help us stay private because the machines don't like life and nature, so they'll be hesitant to come look at us in this space. We get no actual reason why it happens in the forest, which I think is honestly kind of a missed opportunity. I think the dojos and the chair, they're all kind of reflective of Morpheus's conscious choices and how they affect the environment. And, you know, the architect's room shows how many times this has happened. It's all illustrative of something. And I think the place where they meet to discuss war tactics or whatever could have served a similar purpose. I think, you know, if you want to talk about Niobe with it, maybe it's a cell or it's still like a blank scape with a single chair in it. Maybe it's ornate like Morpheus. And you can say that, like, the cell shows that she's, you know, distrustful of Sati because she's a machine. And Niobe went through just complete hell in the original trilogy at the hands of the machines. Or, you know, the blank scape with just the fancy table can show that she's still kind of set in her ways from when the machines attacked. And she still holds on a lot to how Morpheus thought and did things. Or on the other side, if you want to use it to illustrate something about Sati, maybe it's like a fantasy land and she comes in on a unicorn. It can show that she's like kind of disconnected from how these things work for humans, and maybe there's a little distrust because it's like, does she view this as just a fictional game we're playing or something? Does she think she's some sort of big hero and that's clouding her judgment? Or maybe it's like a cute children's room and that shows her immature understanding of humanity or something to give her development. Because I know I mentioned I like that they brought Sati back, and I do. I think that it's cool, and I kind of spoiled myself on it when I was looking up to see if they'd brought in other actors back from the original trilogy, and I saw they'd cast someone for Sati. But she's kind of bland. She doesn't have much of a personality, and I think that's really a shame. In the end, Matrix Resurrections is an okay movie. There's some parts there's part singular made up of two incredibly attractive actors I really like about it. And then there's parts I don't. And, you know, the original trilogy, them doing this weird shit, well, it's not going to ruin that for me. And if you like it, you know, good on you. And if you don't, go to my comment section and yell at me about it. I really need the SEO at this point, because YouTube's just bullshit. But I'm just gonna come right out and say it. Me, Grouchy M. Styles, could have made a better Matrix movie than all of Hollywood put together. And that's what I'm gonna leave you with for this video. Like, comment, subscribe, all that good YouTube stuff. And I hope you like this new sort of video, because I have lots of opinions I like sharing.